In this tutorial, we're going to make this holographic 3D card. Hello and welcome back. Apologies for the long absence. I've been kind of struggling to come up with ideas. I don't want to just sort of parrot stuff that other people have done. That being said, this tutorial is a port of a tutorial I saw for After Effects. I'll leave a link in the description to the original video if you want to check it out and see how the two pieces of software sort of differ and are similar. So as per usual, we will be working in Fusion. So you need to find your Fusion comp. If you're a regular reader, your Fusion comp will be down here in the favorites bar. If you're not, make sure your effects library is turned on. Go to effects and your Fusion comp is at the top here. If you click this little star button, it will put it in the favorites bar ready for the next tutorial. So bring the Fusion comp in and hit the Fusion button. We're going to break this down into sections, I suppose. The first thing to concentrate on is the holographic foil effect for the text and the border of the card. To make the holographic effect, hit Shift Space Bar and search plasma. You're then going to want a brightness and contrast node, which you can either get the same way or you come to your hotbar here and grab it off the hotbar. And then we want the soft glow. So Shift Space Bar, soft to get the soft glow. And what you will start off with is something like this. Now, through the magic of editing, I'm going to replace those with ones I prepared earlier. And I have a look something like this. So to get this look, you can go into your plasma node, go to color and tweak with the phases, the red, green and blue phases until you get some sort of pattern that you like. I took a brightness and contrast in just to tone it down a little bit and then added a soft glow. So that's effectively your holographic foil. Okay, so we need to make our card outline and text. So we're going to bring in a rectangle from here, from the hotbar, and we're going to put that rectangle into the viewer. And we're going to adjust it to be the size that we want it. This is entirely up to you. We're going to come to the inspector, we're going to uncheck solid, and we're going to give it a border width of 0.005, like so, and we're going to round the corners a bit so it looks a bit like a card. So now we've got the edge, we need the middle bit. So again, we're going to bring in another rectangle, pipe the first rectangle into the blue input of the second one and view it. Again, we're going to make this rectangle non-solid, same border width 0.005 and same corner radius 0.12. And again, we're going to eyeball the size of our window and position it just like so. I mean, you can position it where you want. For the example I had text at the top and some little text at the bottom, so I guess it's about judging that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to feed those two into a background node. It doesn't actually matter what color you have your background node because it's just going to be acting as a mask for our holographic paper in inverted commas. Once you've got that, you can bring in your text nodes and just merge the output of the text onto the output of the background, like so. Select your text and put in whatever text you want and change the font and all that kind of stuff. In case you missed what I was doing there, I've added character level styling to get the different sizes on the text. Hit YouTube, character level styling for Davinci Resolve. There's loads of tutorials out there that will explain what I just did. Okay, so we've got our basic outline. Just for consistency, I'm going to turn my background white. And this is now going to act as a mask for this. So all we do is we take the output of this second merge and pipe it into the mask blue input of the plasma, and you end up with that. So now we've got the outline. The next thing we're going to do is start to add the mechanism, the main mechanism for how this works. And the main mechanism for how this works is a node called a DVE node. So shift spacebar and type DVE. And this brings you a DVE node. A DVE node basically simulates a 3D environment without actually having to go through a 3D environment. Obviously it's not as customizable as a proper 3D environment, but for this purpose it works really well. So we're going to disconnect our card for a minute. We're going to pipe the merge 2 into our DVE node, and we're going to put our DVE node back into the plasma. Now what the DVE node allows us to do is we can rotate our card in 3D space. So we can make it spin, or we can tip it backwards and forwards, however we want. How we get the holographic effect is that the plasma image is stationary and our mask is moving over it. So it gives the impression of that sort of shimmering holographic look. So that gives us our outline. Next, we need to add our card in. And to do that, we're going to start using instances. Now, I'm going to use instance copies a lot in this tutorial. Basically, what an instance is if you, for example, take the first rectangle, press Control or Command C to copy it, click away, and then press Shift Control or Command V to paste it. You'll see that you get this little green line joining them together. This is an exact copy of this with all the relevant settings. What you can do with an instance node, however, is select certain controls that you can change independently. At the minute, if I change a control in the instance, it will be reflected in the original and vice versa. So we need to isolate some controls. So select your instance rectangle, come to your inspector. You can see that all these green boxes are in place. They mean all those controls are instanced. At the minute, everything is. Things like invert and solid you can't see because they don't have value boxes to put a green box around, but they are instanced. So what we're going to do is de-instance some controls, and the controls we're going to de-instance are the border width. So hover your mouse over the word, right click and select de-instance. And we're going to do the same for solid. Right click, de-instance. Now what we can do is check solid and drop this value back to default. Now if we bring in another background, we can connect this up as a mask, and now we've got a solid background for our card. What colour that solid background is entirely up to you. To get the two to work together, simply take the output from the soft glow and merge it back onto the background. Now you can view it, and you've got a black card with your holographic foil on it. So the next thing we need to do is get rid of this portion in the middle, which is where our images are going to be. Now to do that, I'm going to use another instance. This time I'm going to take rectangle 2, Control or Command C to copy, click away, Shift, Control or Command and V to paste another instance. Now we're going to disconnect the rectangle and we're going to pipe it in to the mask of our second instance and put the second instance back into our background, like so. Now to get it to cut a hole, we're going to need to de-instance stuff again. So select your instance of your second rectangle, come to your inspector. Again, we're going to de-instance border width, de-instance solid, and we're also this time going to de-instance paint mode. So now we can drop the border width, we can make it a solid, and we can change the paint mode to subtract. So now we've got our window that we can put whatever we want into. What we also need to do is we need this background to move in exactly the same way as our foil does. So we're going to come to DVE, we're going to Control-C to copy, and this time I'm going to select the background node and then press Shift, Control and V to paste. And that's going to paste an instance of our DVE node. So now we can select either the instance or the original DVE, and if we rotate around Y, you can see everything moves together. We don't need to de-instance anything in this particular copy of the DVE, but we will later on. Okay, so I guess the next part is to think about what we're going to put in our window. Now I've got I used and I'm going to use in this tutorial 3 elements for the window. I have the background, I have my channel logo, and I had a nice lady doing her presentation. You can put still images or videos, it doesn't really matter. I would recommend for the very back layer a still image, because if you've got something moving, the parallax that you get from the effect is less noticeable. Now what you'll notice is I've laid these out quite specifically. So if you think, I know we work in a node-based system, but for a minute think in layers. So all this is the card, is the top layer. The next layer down is going to be our presenter. Behind her is going to be the logo, and then behind the logo is going to be your background. The reason I've set them up this way is because we're going to merge them together, and the way I merge is I take whichever element is going to be on top and merge it on to the next element, so that the next element ends up underneath. So the card's underneath, or rather she's underneath and the card's on top of her. And I would merge the others in the same way, so whichever layer is on top is the output that you take from, and then put it onto whichever layer you want below. All that being said, I'm going to take a couple of minutes and just set up all these elements so that they fit, because at the minute they're all random sizes and stuff. So I'll whiz through that quickly and I'll be back with you in a second. Okay, so we've got our various elements set up. So as I said before, that little interlude, first thing I'm going to do is get the presenter in the right place. So I'm going to bring the output of this merge 3 and bring it onto the output of merge 5. This creates another merge and basically joins the two clips together. What we need to do now is get her in the right position. So I'm going to use the merge that's here. If you used an image that fits and you didn't have to do all this nonsense, then stick a transform node in and use the transform node to resize and reposition the image. But because I've got this merge here, I can use that. So bring the size down to where you want it and position her, or whatever element you're using, where you want it, like so. Now, the magic. We're going to come to our original DVE node. I'm going to select it, Command C to copy. We're going to select our merge that's attached to the girl, and then Shift, Command and V to paste another instance of our DVE node. Now, again, you can do it with the original or any of your instances because they all work together. If you move your Y, you can see that she is going to move with your card. But she's with the card, she's on the same plane, so you don't get any sense of depth to it. To introduce the depth, we're going to select the instance of the DVE, we're going to come to the inspector and go to where it says Z pivot or Z pivot, right click and de-instance. And then we're just going to increase this, and I'm going to increase it to 0.025. These numbers are arbitrary and you can play around with them as you're building to get the best look. Now if we start to spin our card, you can see that she's moving slightly differently because the DVE node has effectively pushed her further back into the screen. So the next problem we're going to need to solve is if you come round too far, you can see she starts to appear at the back of the card, and we want to get rid of that. We don't want to be able to see her at all once the card comes round. So to do that, we're going to bring in a background node. We're going to take the output of our instance DVE and merge it onto the background node, and then connect the merge back to our original merge in the flow. Make your background transparent. And now we're going to need a mask that's the same size as the window. Fortunately, we already have one. And we're going to do some more instancing. So if you come to original rectangle 2, Command C to copy, click somewhere down where we're working and Shift Command V to paste, you've now got an instance of your rectangle. What we're going to do is we're going to select that instance, we're going to come into the inspector and we're going to de-instance border width and solid. We're going to check solid, we're going to put our border width back to 0, and we're going to pipe that into our merge. So our image is now masked, but if we come to our DVE, what we find as we move is that it's not masking, and the reason it's not masking is because our mask needs to move with everything else. So we're going to again instance our DVE node, so Command C, click away, Shift Command V to make an instance. We're going to take the output from our rectangle, our mask, put it into the yellow input of the DVE node or instance DVE, and put the output of our instance DVE back into our merge. Now our mask will move with everything else, and as you come round you can't see the girl at the back anymore. And that is basically how we get the parallax effect. And now it's just a case of rinse and repeat, really. So we're going to take our next element, which is our logo. We're going to come to our last merge node. We're going to merge it. Let me just move that out of the way so we've got a bit of room. We're going to merge it onto our logo. And again, we can now view this. We're going to come to our logo setup, select the merge node and use that to position and resize the logo. Now we need to bring in our instance DVE. So select your DVE, copy, select your merge, Shift Control and V to paste. And again, we're going to come and de-instance the Z pivot. This time we're going to push it back to 0.05. And again, if you now check it, you can see that the logo moves at a slightly different rate than the girl. And so you're starting to get your parallax effect. The bigger the gaps between your Z pivot layers, the more pronounced the parallax is going to be. Again, we're going to need to mask it, so we're going to need to repeat the steps to get the instance rectangle, instance DVE background and merge. So bring in a background, make it transparent, disconnect here, merge your instance DVE onto your background and put your merge back into your flow. Again, we're going to want instance rectangle, and instance DVE. We're going to put our instance rectangle into the DVE yellow input and the DVE output into our mask input of the merge. And again, with our mask, we need to come in de-instance border width, de-instance solid, check solid, and bring our border width to 0. And now again, if we go past the edge of the card, our circle will disappear and won't appear at the back. And the final element is our background. So again, we take our final merge it onto our background. Now I'm not going to change the size of this because I want it big. I want it to go beyond the card so that as we're turning, there's extra background to see behind. Again, instance copy your DVE, de-instance your Z pivot, and this time I'm going to push it back to 0.075. And then we need to do the masking. So we've got our instances, bring in your background, merge it on, reconnect it, rectangle into the yellow input of the DVE, DVE into your mask, select your rectangle, de-instance border width, de-instance solid, check solid, check border width, make sure your background's transparent, and that should be your 3D card. All you need to do from there on in is chuck it on a nice subtle background of some description. What I also did, and again it's purely optional, is I chucked a drop shadow. Just to lift it off the background. And that's basically it. It looks very confusing, it gets very confusing, but if you work through it methodically, it's fairly straightforward. I hope it makes sense. I hope you can do something with it. I'm not expecting you to make foil cards, but I guess it can be adapted to bigger images as long as you've got some sort of window that you can put elements into, it should work. Finally, and don't forget to do this because otherwise it won't work, is you need to find your media out, bring it down somewhere, pipe it in. Once you've got it to your media out, you can add your animation, and to add your animation, come to your original DVE, and then you can add whatever animation you want onto your card. So I had, in the example, something akin to this, give or take, but obviously you can animate this any way you want. I just had the sort of rocking animation for the sake of demonstrating. You can then come back to the edit tab, give it a second to cache, and hit play. So yeah, I hope that was useful. Even if you don't make a holographic foiled 3D card, you've hopefully learned some new techniques and learned something that you didn't know before. Oh, just before I go, if you've got anything that you'd like me to do a tutorial on, drop a note in the comment. It helps me, and I'm actually doing stuff that you want. Please feel free to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, and I will catch you on the next one. Cheers now. Bye.